I now give the floor to the distinguished permanent representative of Armenia.
Mr. President, I thank the Special Advisor on the responsibility to protect for presenting the Secretary General's report underscoring the urgency of addressing challenges related to the prevention agenda. The report highlights necessity for states and the international community to uphold their commitments in protecting populations and the vital role of civil society organizations in advocating for the prevention of mass atrocity crimes worldwide. Despite the efforts made and commitments voiced, the reality remains that atrocities continue to occur, often with blatant disregard for international humanitarian and human rights law by various actors. While the report of the Secretary General highlights many important conceptual aspects related to prevention and protection, it is imperative to reflect and address particular situations where gross violations persist with impunity. Less than a year ago, in September 2023, a large-scale offensive against Nagorno-Karabakh resulted in mass forced displacement of the entire Armenian population from their ancestral homeland. Over 100,000 people sought refuge in Armenia, leaving behind their homes, properties, shrines, and the millennia-old cultural and religious heritage. Azerbaijan's violent attack was preceded by a 10-month-long blockade of Nagorno-Karabakh in direct breach of international humanitarian law and legally binding orders of International Court of Justice, instigating a man-made humanitarian catastrophe with a devastating impact on civilians. The premeditated and well-planned aggression against people under blockade, which drove the entire population into forced displacement, is an explicit case of ethnic cleansing perpetrated under the watch of the international community. It prompted the Special Advisor of the UN Secretary General on Prevention of Genocide to issue a statement on 22 September stressing that, quote, military action can only contribute to escalate what is already a tense situation and to put the civilian population in the area at risk of violence, including risk of genocide and related atrocity crime, unquote. The entire UN system, including its humanitarian and political arms, have yet to acknowledge the gravity of these violations and to reflect on the failure to prevent them, while making efforts to work towards ensuring dignified conditions for the forcefully displaced refugees to return to their places of origin as guaranteed by the international law. There is an urgent need to evaluate the current toolbox of the United Nations system for prevention and to establish more responsive and effective mechanisms for addressing the root causes of conflict and to ensure accountability for atrocity crimes and for violations of international humanitarian law and human rights law. Compliance with the legally binding decisions of international courts and tribunals is fundamental in ensuring that perpetrators of atrocity crimes are brought to justice, and Armenia is resolute in fighting atrocity crimes, including through mechanisms provided by the International Criminal Court. Mr. President, the Armenian people understand deeply the suffering and devastation that genocide inflicts. Our history compels us to advocate for justice, accountability, and remembrance. Armenia has traditionally promoted resolutions related to genocide prevention and memorialization, having introduced the first resolution at the Commission on Human Rights back in 1998. Subsequently, the scope and the substance of the resolutions on the subject have been fundamentally enriched. At the forefront of our efforts stand the recurrent resolutions on genocide prevention, which we have been tabling at the Human Rights Council, as well as the General Assembly, establishing the International Day of Commemoration and Dignity of the Victims of the Crime of Genocide and the Prevention of this crime. The GA Resolution 69/323 stands as a cornerstone in our efforts to raise awareness and to honor those who have fallen victims of past inaction, as well as to stress the importance for collective tribute and respect towards victims, survivors, and descendants of all genocides, crimes adjudicated in the international courts of law, and those whose perpetrators never received justice. Armenia has been regularly hosting global forum against the crime of genocide attended by public figures, religious, academics, civil society, and media representatives from across the world to contribute to multilateral efforts in promoting the global prevention agenda. The 5th Global Forum Against the Crime of Genocide, to be held in December, will elaborate on the challenges of early warning and timely action and the ways to strengthen the effectiveness of international mechanisms in addressing the risk of atrocity crimes. Mr. President, as the report of the Secretary General indicates, failure to effectively protect populations from atrocities erodes the international system. Without preventive action to address these challenges, the cycle of atrocities and human suffering will persist, undermining the fundamental principles of justice, human dignity, and respect for human rights on a global scale. It is imperative to bridge this implementation gap by refining strategies, enhancing the capacities of relevant stakeholders, and fostering a culture of proactive intervention to address the root causes of atrocities before they escalate. I thank you.